Now to the United States, where former President Donald Trump did not keep away from the beginning of his civil fraud trial in New York on Monday. The fraud case in New York threatens to shred Trump's valued self-image as the perfect leader. In his campaigns, he's still presenting his golf results, hotel planes, and businesses as proof of his outstanding business acumen. And let's bring in Habib Salawu. He's a global affairs analyst for more on this judicial scrutiny of Donald Trump. Habib Salawu joins us virtually from Texas, United States. Good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So there are a lot of legal cases against Trump, but in terms of impact on him, where does this particular case lie compared to other indictments?
If this does not threaten his political ambition, the forfeiture of assets in New York and his company would be a great blow.
All right. So in terms of, let's talk about his mood in court. It is usually very somber and slightly angry. And that's compared to the Trump who will address the press outside the court. That mood in court, what does this say about how he actually feels about these cases?
I've actually taken time to study Donald Trump, and you would agree with me that when it comes to theatrical display, it's very good. That mood that we saw in court may reflect anger, but that's the mood required to rile up his base.
But does he also suggest about the severity or how he sees this case in terms of the seriousness and the impact it could have on him?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of irritation in that look. There's a lot of disgust. There's also, to a very strong sense, if you look beyond, him, there's resignation almost at a point because Letitia has shown over time that, with regards to Donald Trump and his activities in the state of New York, that the state will, pursue this to the last blood of it. So he knows that it's very difficult to, wriggle his way out of this. And so there's that thought of, I can, talk my way out of this. I can garner public sympathy, but it's the Lord. And that's why United States of America is the country that it is. These institutions can be very strong.
And I want to get to issues around, how the public opinion on this. But I wanted to talk about the fact that this is actually taking a hit at the very thing that Trump holds dear and the legacy that, perhaps is his greatest legacy. And that's how well he says he has done in business. And that's what this particular case seeks to attack, the fact that he's overvalued his assets and himself. How do you think he sees this particular case as against every other indictment?
Donald Trump needs to be demystified. And we heard Michael Cohen, his former lawyer, talk about how he would just sit down and come up with numbers, trying to get on Forbes' list, doing all of that. So with this happening, I think a part of him isn't really fully concerned. But for somebody who is particularly invested in keeping a certain image, this also, rubs against his ego and all that he has stood for. But a lot of people genuinely know that Donald Trump's assets have been or exaggerated in the past.
And let's talk about that court of public opinion you mentioned earlier. Once again, he attacked the judge and the prosecutor and called this case a politically motivated witch hunt organized by the Department of Justice. And there are no indications that the Department of Justice is involved in any of this particular case. But what role do you think that the court of public opinion would play as the general election draws closer, rather?
But you know that in politics, commentary plays a very, very critical role. And the good thing about commentary is that you can look at the buildup, where it started from. Everybody knows, apart from those who are core supporters, blind core supporters, everybody knows that Donald Trump would always attack people. The first thing he does is to, doubt push doubt into the credibility of, institutions or people. So for those of us who are keen followers and believers in the system, we know that it's all a game. Like Letitia said, nobody's above the law. And now it's subject to interpretation. Prove beyond reasonable doubt that you did not scam the state of New York. You did not added or overvalue your assets. You did not cut corners. You did not do all of that. Bring your lawyers. Let's talk about it in court. It's beyond post courtroom interviews.
Mm. All right, let's talk about the recent polls released in the U.S. I think that's about 3 days ago, and Trump is polling higher than Biden, President Biden. This is good for him. All of these court cases, they're good for him in terms of fundraising and campaign, and they.
Yes, the only thing that can prevent President Donald Trump from contesting is an outright conviction, and that would prevent him from going into the race. Otherwise, all of the things happening in the U.S. now seem to be against President Joe Biden, and point towards favoring President Donald Trump. There's a lot of dissent going on. There's a lot of disappointment, economic situation, people, and it's easy. It's like a fuel gauge. If it's not empty, it's fuel. It's full. So if it's not the Democrats, if they're doing badly, it flips to the Republicans, and that's why he has held strongly to the party, and he still has that hope, irrespective of his travails in court and all that.
And he has not participated in the debates. Next year, he has 4 more cases. He's going to have to appear in court in all of those cases. Where would these, and he wouldn't have enough time to campaign. What would these cases mean for him? The media appearance, all of these publicities he's getting. What would that mean for him?
The way I see it, it's going to condense his campaigns. He's going to be using a lot of proxies, people who are aspiring into new positions and have identified with Trump would hold forth for him in certain places where he's unable to attend due to his court appearances. But let's not forget that it's Donald Trump. He's going to fight to the last drop. If he's not convicted, he will come out and vie for the office in 2024. And so he's still a candidate that should be recommended.
And Trump is not the only one who is facing battles. President Biden also is. The Republicans have opened an impeachment inquiry against President Biden. There is also the indictment of Hunter Biden on felony gun charges. Are these less of a liability to President Biden as he goes into this race compared to the Trump indictments?
You could look at it 2 ways. We know President Biden, or let me not say, I feel he may not seek re-election, but this would hurt the Democratic Party as well. But then also, you cannot take away what incumbency gains and offers. You're distracted by the primary job of leading the country, and so you get your team to deal with all of this. It would swing some voters, but there are a lot of factors working against Joe Biden at the moment. A lot more to worry other than that, worry about. He may get an indictment and impeachment from the House of the Congress, reps, but maybe not from the Senate because of the numbers. But still, a lot of bipartisan consultation will go on. So I think it wouldn't pay much concern to that as much as trying to ensure that, in 2024, whoever represents him can continue. But it's a struggle for the Democratic Party.
What about the American population? You have 2 men who are above 70 running for, being the front runner for their parties. Both of them facing different kind of cases and battles. One of them an impeachment inquiry, the other indictments. Both of them were also the front runners in 2020. How do you think that the American population is looking at this and wondering and the impact it will have on the voter turnout next year?
It's interesting you ask that because the system here allows anybody to vie for office, but over time we've seen that it's not been any better than Nigeria, where it appears Socratic and all that. But the truth is, for a younger person to come up now and upturn whatever it is these 2 people have put in place, it has to be radical. And I do not think there's time for that radical approach. It would have to be someone that's a lot more vile and, more, should I say, blunt than Donald Trump to be able to cut across the Republicans, across the country, Trump has a strong hold. There are a couple of people that may come up over the next 2, 3, 4 years, but for 2024, it will be very difficult to DeSantis tried. It will be very difficult to find a younger person show up and try to, hijack the party from Donald Trump or even Biden.
Habib Salawu, thanks for your time. Always a pleasure.